it's my honor to introduce a professor from the U, Mr. Peter Kennedy. Professor Peter Kennedy. He's a professor of mycology. He's going to talk to you a little bit. He's a very fun guy who's going to talk to you about fungi. Professor Kennedy.
I have to be honest that when I first got contacted by Joy, I wasn't sure whether it was real because it's not often that a professor at a university gets contacted by a fashion designer about coming to a fashion show to talk about fungi. But I met Joy, she came to my lab, and her enthusiasm and interest in fungi was absolutely brilliant. It was beautiful, it was exciting, it was inspiring, and it was totally different than my own interest in fungi. So I was really, really honored to have the chance to come here today. So I promise I will keep this short. I know that you guys came for the fashion show, not for a lecture. But Joy asked me to say a few things that you may not know about fungi. So I thought, what could I think of that would go quick? And so I just wanted to think about 5 things that you may not know about fungi that I think are really interesting. I tried to make a slideshow. Unfortunately, I'm not sure it did much other than help the little guys dance for a while before the fashion show, which was great. But I will put up some slides so if you can see them. So if you can see that image, basically when you think of fungi, most people think of mushrooms. And when I first started studying fungi, that's where I started. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. When you think about, say, an apple and an apple tree, that's a good analogy where the mushrooms are the apples and the tree is all below ground. And what's interesting is the more we've studied fungi, we've learned that fungi are amongst the oldest and biggest organisms on this planet, and yet we don't see them. So there's an aerial image that you can't see at all. If you were to fly over forests in Western North America, you can see these huge fairy rings that are actually miles in diameter. And that's a single fungal individual. To grow that big, it takes many, many years. You can imagine how much energy it takes. And so even though fungi are oftentimes these very ephemeral fruit bodies that we like to see in the forest, say in the fall, they can actually be quite huge. They've been immortalized on the side of U-Haul trucks, so the humongous fungus, which is famous from Michigan, was the first of these to show this fact. But they are really, really impressive. They just don't happen to be as easy to see as some of the other organisms on our planet. So there are lots of fungi. They are numerous, and I thought it'd be fun to tell you guys about what we do and don't know about how many different fungi are on this planet. So for perspective, there's about 5,000 mammals that are on the planet, about 10,000 birds, and probably around 300,000 plant species. So mycology, the study of fungi, which is what I do, we have a long history and we've worked hard and we've described about 100,000 species. But it turns out when you go into areas where we catalog all the plants and all the fungi, the ratio of fungi to plants is actually one where there's a lot more fungi than plants. So we can use this ratio where we've counted all the plants on the planet, we've done a good job, and extrapolate that out to how many fungi we have. And if you do that, you get estimates of anywhere between 1.5 to 6 million species of fungi. So there's clearly lots of work still to do, and it's one of the more diverse groups of organisms that we have on this planet. Fungi are best known as decomposers, hence Joy's beautiful From Decay, right, as the idea for tonight, and that's absolutely what fungi do really well. But they actually play lots of roles in ecosystems, so I just want to say that in addition to being great decomposers, although we stand on the surface, so we see these beautiful mushrooms, if you were to look down into the soil, all of that white mycelium, that thread, those filaments that are out in the soil, those are on the roots of many, many plants, including many of the crops that we depend on. And they are helping those plants grow and deal with stressors and basically be able to perform in ways that they couldn't without this symbiosis. So the last sort of scientific fact that I think is interesting is that some of you guys, if you ever took a course on fungi, you probably took it in a botany department, or I actually teach in a plant biology department at the University of Minnesota. But as we've started to study more and more about fungi, what we've learned actually is that rather than being more closely related to plants, fungi are actually more closely related to animals. You might think, why is Peter telling you guys this? And the reason why I'm telling you this is because that means that us, animals, humans, right, we share a lot of the same metabolic pathways as fungi. And so when we get sick with fungi, it's actually harder to find drugs to protect us than it is to other types of organisms like bacteria. So the issue with antibiotic resistance is one that's particularly important when we think about fungi and some of the diseases that we as humans and other animals are afflicted by. The last thing, and I promise that's unreadable completely, but what you're looking at types of cancer as the different columns that go across and different types of fungi. And what you hopefully might be able to make out are lots of X's. And this is basically many different scientific studies that have been carried out to look at fungal chemicals. Fungi have these incredible secondary metabolites, and they have this chemical arsenal that is rich and has actually been shown in many cases to inhibit cancer. We're still doing a lot of research trying to understand how some of that works, but it is exciting, and especially on an event like tonight with Kill Cancer, this seems like a really nice combination of science and art and design. So, a few take-home messages, no exams, I promise. Fungi are amongst the largest and oldest organisms on Earth. Fungi and their diversity are probably somewhere in the millions on this planet. They are big decomposers, but they also do lots of other important things in ecosystems. They're more closely related to us than they are to plants. And last but not least, many of the chemicals that fungi produce are ones that can help fight cancer. So thank you very much for this opportunity.